This is an open letter to my capitalist friends. If you do a little bit of research on in books and on the internet and read some information regarding the Cuban Revolution, you come across the fact that you see that Fidel Castro and his family and his band of brothers were not really anti-capitalist. They weren't communist before the revolution. They weren't communist during the revolution, and they weren't communist slightly after the revolution. And you can, when you're doing all this research, you will find out that you will come across a lot of videos and pictures that Fidel Castro has had before the revolution. He has traveled to United States. He was a fan of United States. He played baseball. He liked baseball. He was a fan of New York Yankees, I believe. But so you go on, and you find out that there was no reason for Fidel Castro to become communist, for his revolution to become communist, and he himself become a communist leader, and further on take an anti-American position in the Caribbean. And you're thinking to yourself, what happened from before the revolution? He was fine with America, he was fine with capitalism during revolution, he was fine with capitalism slightly after revolution, he was okay with America and capitalism. What happened that he turned into a communist state? Well, I'm going to explain this with regards to Cuba in a very simple manner to those friends of mine, those capitalist friends of mine who have been indoctrinated in fearing communism and thinking communism is something that just barges through the door with a communist manifesto and suddenly takes over everything. And they have been you guys have been indoctrinated with this idea that everybody's doing fine, and everybody's having a good time, like in a picnic, and suddenly some bad guys come in with a communist manifesto and they smash the party. It doesn't happen like that, and I will explain what happened in Cuba, and you can extrapolate this into and find out more or less the same scenario has taken place with regards to other nations that are currently communist or semi-communist or a tightly controlled socialist systems. And you can extrapolate this to those countries and find out, yeah, more or less they're all following the same scenario. Here is what happened to Cuba and why it had to go to the communist way. The Cuban Revolution was a nationalist revolution. It was for self-determination. What the Cubans found themselves in a situation in which rich people from United States, mostly from New York, Wall Street people, Jeffrey Epstein type people, have taken a lot of money that they have made, a lot of large sums of money. That is, it's common in Wall Street type people. They would take these large sums of money along with some mafia from New York, the Wall Street types and the mafiosos and other not so other interesting individuals would go to Cuba and buy properties and buy businesses and buy anything that is worth anything. And they would as investment or as a business to make money. And they would establish, these Americans in Cuba would establish themselves and buy anything that is worth anything. And the Cubans, the locals, the natives, didn't have access to the kind of money that, you know, people from higher echelons of New York had access to or have access to currently. So they can't compete. The natives of Cuba cannot compete with them, could not compete with them. So the Cubans found themselves in a situation in which 80%, 70%, 80% of the native population of the island was living in shanty towns, but the foreigners who came from abroad, from New York mostly, from Florida, from New York, they had all the mansions and all the businesses and all the nightclubs. They were the owners of everything in Cuba. The result was this resentment of the locals who are born and bred there, not being treated like third-class citizens. And you would feel that in any other island, any other country, this would be resentful. The locals this resentment would accumulate over years. So Fidel Castro, being, you know, a red-blooded human being who was a native to that land of Cuba, he saw the situation around him and he said, no, enough is enough. We want some self-determination. We want some respect. Our citizens should not be, those who are born in this island should not be treated as third-class citizens on their own island. So that was a nationalist, so he came up with a resistance, a nationalist movement, or you call it revolution, a nationalist revolution in Cuba. That was all about self-determination. It wasn't about communism, it was about self-determination, period. Hey, we don't want the Americans coming and buying the whole island here, because then they come over here, they buy everything, and us, the native islanders, have to, you know, serve them, become their servants, and live in shanty towns and serve them, the foreigners. So because of that, they had this nationalist revolution on the idea of self-determination and buying some respect for their own citizens, their own natives. What happened after this revolution, and the guy they fought against was Mr. Batista, who was a president, who was a dictator, president, I mean, presidents of Egypt for the past many years. Presidents of Egypt have also called themselves presidents, but the last one was the president of Egypt for 30 years, with the backings of the United States. So the United States doesn't really mind if a president sticks around for 30, 40, 50 years, as long as that president, you know, plays ball with US corporations. So the same was with Batista and the guy before Batista. As long as, you know, these leaders play ball with the corporations, U.S. corporations, they can stay they can stay around as long as they want. Democracy is not that important in these cases. Just like we can see in Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries where there are monarchies, and, you know, it's a father to son kind of handover of power, and there is no such thing as democracy. But nobody makes a fuss in the United States or in Europe. Nobody makes a fuss about why they are not democracies, because they're playing ball with U.S. corporations. They're doing business, so it's okay. Now, here is the thing. But these guys rose up against Batista, who was playing ball with U.S. corporations and didn't mind his own citizens living as second or third class citizens out in their own island. They took down Batista, and because these guys were nationalists and were going against the interest of U.S. corporations, United States started fighting back against them. Remember, the Cubans, Castro and his people, they had nothing against American people. They had nothing against, capitalism. They had nothing against anything. The only thing they stood up for was to push back against the extremely rich Americans who have gone to Cuba and bought up everything. They pushed back against U.S. corporations who have gone to Cuba and bought everything. Individuals and corporations who had bought everything in Cuba. So that's the only thing they fought against. And because their interest was in danger, they persuaded Uncle Sam's managers to fight back against this nationalist movement in Cuba. And beside that, Bay of Pigs and all that military reactions that Uncle Sam's managers applied, they started applying, the first thing that they did was they applied economic pressure to prevent this nationalist movement from succeeding, to push back against this nationalist movement. They applied economic pressure, that is blockading the island, preventing, trade between the island and United States first, and then preventing trade between the island and other countries, Mexico, Europe, South American countries, other Central American. So preventing this island from doing commerce. Sort of like, no, you're pushing back against our corporations, against our rich people, owning everything in Cuba. So we're going to prevent anybody else from doing business with you. Blockade. So what happens when blockade takes effect? When you blockade a country, a group of people, when you prevent them from trading, what is the normal scenario for a country? The normal scenario for a country is that, or a group of people, is that countries become efficient because of their weather, their soil, their culture, their know-how, their technology. Because of all of these factors, countries, groups of people become efficient in producing a few things. They become efficient in producing a few things. And once they do that, now these things could be agricultural or industrial, but they become efficient in producing a few, and they take these few things that they are producing at high quality, high grade, high volume, they take it to the market, they trade, and they buy whatever else they need. Just like a human being, just like a family, whatever business that family is in. You produce a few things, one thing or a few things, you sell it, you make money, and then you purchase other things that you need. What happens if a country, a group of people are blocked from doing trade, selling this few things that they're producing efficiently and purchasing whatever else they need? What happens when that blockade takes effect? What happens is simple. The group has to adapt. The key word here is adapt. They have to adapt communist instruments in order to survive. They have to adapt. If you blockade them, in order for most of their people to survive and not die of hunger, is that they have to adapt an even-handed distribution of little resources that they have, because they have been blockaded from trading with others. They have to adapt communistic mechanisms for a fairer distribution of little resources that they have to work with, in order to prevent millions of people from dying. Period. So you can say United States actually enforced communism on Cuba. By blockading Cuba, you can say United States managers forced Cuba to become communist. They didn't want to become communist. Nobody wants to become communist. But when you're blockaded and you're prevented from trading and selling a few goods that you can produce efficiently and purchasing other goods that you need, when you're blockaded from doing that, you have to adapt communist mechanisms, i.e. distribution of little resources that you have in a fairer manner to prevent your people from dying. And who gets to do that distribution? It's a normal thing to expect that the government, when things get really shitty, when situation really gets really shitty, the entity that has the military in its possession, that is the government, has an enforcement power in its possession, i.e. the military, that entity, which is the government, takes the mantle of becoming the distributor of that little resources to prevent millions from dying. So, communism, in short, communism was forced on Cuba by US managers, United States managers, through application of embargoes and sanctions, by preventing Cuba doing any kind of trade with anybody else, including the United States, especially United States. By preventing that trade from happening, they're forcing Cubans to become communist, i.e. try to distribute the little resources that they have in an even fashion amongst their population to prevent people dying of hunger. Rationing is communism. And if you follow this throughout the world, this same thing has happened over and over and over and over again. I.e., to put it in a simple format, very simple format, in 90% of cases in which the countries have become communist. This has been the sequence of events. Colonialism, i.e., which means the pinkskins have gone in to a country that is not their own, that is not majority pinkskin. They have decided they want to rule over the locals who are not pinkskins. That's colonialism. Forced colonialism by the pinkskins, let's say Vietnam, which the French the French were, trying to make a colony out of Vietnam and were successful in enforcing them upon the Vietnamese for many years. Colonialism, then the fight for independence, self-determination by the locals, war, embargo by the colonial powers, i.e. the French and later on United States managers, embargoes and sanctions, communism, applying communist instruments by the leadership of the locals because they were under economic embargoes and sanctions by the pinkskins. Pinkskin colonialism, locals decide they want to have self-determination, nationalist movements, wars, application of embargoes and sanctions by the pinkskins, blockade of that people by the pinkskins, and application of communist mechanisms by the local leadership in order to prevent their people dying by millions because of application of embargoes and sanctions by the pinkskins. So what they tell you, what they have been telling you, the story that they have been presenting to you, my, pink skin friends, common pink skin friends, my capitalist friends, the story that they have been telling you is that what has been, they have turned the story around and they said, no, we have gone over there to bring them, to prevent them from being communists. We went to war to prevent them from being communists. No, they couldn't be farther from truth if they tried to. This is the absolute bullshit that they have been feeding you, that we have been fighting communism. No, you have been, the pink skin managers sent pink skin in to fight for colonialism, to enforce their will, the pink skin will, upon the locals over there. The fight, the war in Vietnam, in Laos, in Cambodia, in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Somalia, in all over Africa, in Venezuela, in Chile, in Argentina. The war has always been a colonial war. Pinkskins trying to enforce their will upon the local people. That's a colonialist war. Having influence over the locals, preventing self-determination of the locals. That has always been the fight. It hasn't been about spreading Christianity. It hasn't been about spreading democracy. It hasn't been about spreading capitalism. It hasn't been about spreading freedom. None of that. It's all bullshit. It's all about enforcing your will upon others in other parts of the planet. Pinkskins trying to enforce their will on other parts of the planet Earth. That has always been the fight about. And every time, if they got away with it and were able to enforce their will upon the locals of that part of the planet, which is what happened in North America and South America and Australia, the locals got decimated totally. They smashed them, they slaughtered them, they eliminated, genocide, eliminated all of them. Those locals who put up a fight, against this pink skin colonialism, after a war and during the war and after the war, the pinkskins applied economic pressures and embargoes. So those locals had to, as a defensive mechanism, they had to adapt communism, i.e., because they couldn't trade, they couldn't get all the resources they need, so they had to do with little resources that they had, and in order to prevent millions of people from dying, they had to try to divide those little resources equally amongst their people to prevent death. And that mechanism in which the government steps in and tries to divide resources equally between its citizens to prevent death by the millions, that mechanism is called communism. So communism is the defensive mechanism in which the locals had to adapt if they wanted to have any kind of independence, self-determination. Why? Because of application of embargoes and sanctions by the pinkskins. Why? Because the pinkskins wanted to rule them and the locals didn't want to be ruled. Period. There is no there is no other way about it. They have been lying to you that communism comes in and when everybody is having a good time and there is a party going on and capitalism is doing fine and everybody is doing fine, and communism comes in with a manifesto and screws up the party. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Communism is a defensive mechanism when there are little resources to go around and a lot of mouths to feed, and there is a little resources to go around because economic sanctions and embargoes have been applied by the pinkskins. Therefore, communism has to come about as a defensive mechanism. The moment you take out the embargoes and sanctions, you remove the embargoes and sanctions, they don't have to be communist. They will not remain communist. No country will remain communist if you remove sanctions and embargoes from them. There's no need for it. As I said, communism is a defensive mechanism. For the entity to survive, the society to survive, if they are under embargoes and sanctions, they have to become communist. This applies to North Korea. And a prime example of this is China. China was, the British tried to make a colony out of the Chinese, like they did make a colony out of the Indians for 200 years. They tried to make China a colony of themselves. The Chinese fought them tooth and nail. Some parts of China was invaded and became colony of the British and the French, but they fought back, and most of China remained independent. And famines and people going hungry and all of that, one of the results of the economic embargoes that the pinkskins were applying to China. So the Chinese Revolution, again, that was also didn't start as a communist revolution. They had to adapt communist practices because they were under the pinkskin embargoes and sanctions. They were under attack by the pinkskins. Isn't it funny that here's how you can tell that what I'm saying makes sense? Isn't it funny that anywhere that you look that the pinkskins are fighting, they are communist? As if you have a glance at it, it seems that it makes sense. These guys are fighting communism. You can't fight an economic system. At the first glance, it seems like it seems the pinkskins are fighting communism. No, the pinkskins are fighting the locals, and the locals have to adapt because they're under war, under threat, under economic sanctions, and under economic embargoes. The locals have to become communists if they want to survive, if they want most of their people to survive, because they have to ration what little resources they have. But they don't tell you the story like this, because the story like this, telling you exactly what's going on, is not beneficial to the pinkskin managers. Because their ideal world is one in which the pinkskins rule over the planet. All other races take order from the pinkskin. All the other races submit to the pinkskins. This is their ideal world. The pinkskins managers in Europe and North America and Australia, the ideal world that they see is a world in which other races submit to the pinkskin. Therefore, they're attacking Korea, they're attacking Iraq, they attack Afghanistan, they attack Iran, they attack Somalia, they attack South Africa, they attack all over Africa. They start colonies, they start trying to rule directly, and now they're trying to rule by proxy. I mean, United States is ruling Egypt by proxy because the Egyptian president is basically um, a pawn which answers to Washington D.C. End of story. He answers to people above them who just happen to be pink skinned and they happen to, live in London or Washington D.C. That's the Egyptian president. He doesn't answer to his people. He slaughters his people. And that's the ideal kind of, environment that the pink skin managers want. A strong ruler in a shitty part of the world ruling over brown and black and red and yellow, whoever they are, and only answering to the pink skin. Sort of like exactly what they had during colonialism, in which they choose the governor. The pink skins, colonial power, choose governors for different colonies that they have. President of Egypt, for example, is a governor of Egypt, appointed by London and Washington, D.C. The king of Saudi Arabia is a governor of Saudi Arabia, appointed by Washington, D.C. and London. This is the world that they imagine, they want. And in order to have this world, and one should say that, frankly, this world doesn't benefit all the pink skins either, my pink skin friends. Because, during the past 70, 80 years that U.S. managers, Uncle Sam's managers have been getting more and becoming more and more influential all over the planet and having influence in all these local races, having influence over all these local races, the blacks and the browns and the yellows and the reds and whatever. During the past 70 years, this has happened, that Uncle Sam's managers have become more and more and more influential until they have become the superpower of planet Earth. More and more influential over the planet Earth. But you see, during the same time period, the common pink skins in America have had to do with less healthcare, less education, worse food, and many go without shelter or sufficient shelter. So you can't say that growing influence of the pink skin managers of North America and Western Europe all over the world benefits all pink skins equally. It doesn't. As these guys have grown more influential, their own pink skin people have had their life has become worse and worse and worse and worse. Education, healthcare, housing has become worse and worse and worse. And everybody is up to their eyeballs in debt. The pink skin people who live in these lands. So who benefits in this war of influence? In this war of influence in which the pink skin managers decide to, they want to continue colonialism, and if any of those local shitheads put up a fight, they apply embargoes and sanctions, and because of that, those locals have to adopt communism as a means of survival. Those locals are suffering because they have to adapt communism as a means of survival, so they have to do with less. They are suffering, and the locals here are suffering. In the pink skin land, the locals are suffering because their money is going more towards arms and war than towards education, housing, and healthcare. You see what I'm saying? This is where the rubber meets the road. Pink skin managers, Uncle Sam's managers, are not doing anybody any favors. They're not fighting communism, they're fighting the locals. And the locals have to adapt communist mechanisms in order to survive. And because they're fighting the locals on the other side of this fucking planet, their own people are suffering because their money, their productivity is going towards bombs and bombers and not towards their own healthcare, education, and housing. It's poof. It blows your mind. That are you folks kidding me? Are you folks crazy? You're taking money out of pocket of your own people, not spending it on their education or healthcare or housing, but spending it on trying to enforce the pink skin will on the browns and the blacks and the yellows and the reds on the other sides of this planet. And by trying to enforce your will on them, they have to adopt communist mechanisms in order to survive. And then you say, we are attacking them because they're communist. Because we know you don't have any problem with dictatorships. Because many of your friends are dictators. From all the Arab nations are dictators that are your, pink skin managers, appointees and friends, to many of the African leaders who are dictators or presidents for lives that also are considered friends of the pink skins. So you don't have any problem with dictators. So you don't have any problem with Kim Jong-un being a dictator, or whoever the fuck his name is. You don't have any problem with his dictatorship because you're okay with, Saudi Arabian dictatorship. So there is no problem with dictatorship. Then what is the problem? The problem is with their communism. Well, if you stop fighting them, if you remove the embargoes and sanctions, they no longer need to be communist. They will have more resources coming into their country. They don't have to ration resources anymore, so no longer communist. They will sell whatever they are efficient at producing, and they will purchase whatever they need, and no longer communist. And there's no longer a need for rationing. Folks, we go back to the same thing, my pink skin friends, my capitalist friends. All problems on planet Earth have started for the past 500 years from the point where the pink skins have decided to get on their boat and go on the other side of the planet with their big guns and to fight the locals. And they have come up with a lot of pretexts for this fight, taking their boats to the other side of the planet and fighting the locals. They have come up with many pretexts, from we're going there to spread Christianity, to we're going there to spread civility, to we're going over there to spread capitalism and fight communism, and we're going there to spread democracy. Nobody questions, why aren't you trying to spread democracy in Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Kuwait? You went and defended one dictatorship in Kuwait against a supposed democracy of Iraq. I mean, Saddam Hussein at least had a sham of an election. Kuwait never did. Kuwait is a monarchy. So you were defending a monarchy against at least a sham of an election, sham of a democracy. So none of this is true. None of these are true. There's only one reason: to fill up your big ship with big guns and a lot of innocent lives, and take them across the planet to fight the locals over there. There's only one reason, and only one reason. Is because you believe that the people on the other side of the planet should submit to you. Period. One reason. They shall submit to you. Why? Because you feel superior to them. And that's where we reach the point that this racism starts from Washington, D.C., starts from the top. This racism starts from London, from the crown, from the British crown. This racism starts from there. It doesn't start in the street. It gets exhibited in the streets of London and New York by the commoners. But the real application of this racism, the real idea of this racism starts from the heart of London, the heart of the British Kingdom, in which they believe they are superior, therefore they have to go and subdue people on the other side of the planet. It starts from, and the British have been able to pull along Uncle Sam's managers with them. They have been able to manipulate the British have been able to manipulate Uncle Sam's managers in order for them to adopt the same ideas, colonialist ideas, superioristic ideas, that we, the Pinkskins, are superior, therefore they have to take our orders. They have to submit. The browns and the blacks and the yellows and the greens and the reds, they all have to submit to us, the Pinkskins. There we go and fight them. What do we tell to our common people, our common folks in our own land? Why do we have to spend their money on the other side of the planet? We will tell them that we are going there to civilize them. We will tell them that we are going there to bring them Christianity. We will tell them we are going there to fight communism. We are going there. We will tell them we are going there over there to fight, to bring democracy. This is what they feed the commoners in their own land, to get the public opinion with them, so the public wouldn't object to why our money is going over there, turning into bombs and guns, going over there to subdue the locals on the other side of the planet. Why can't we educate our own children over here? Why can't we shelter our own people over here? Why can't we have health care for our own people over here? Why do we have to spend money to try to subdue the people on the other side of the planet? Because of communism? Fuck you. If you remove your sanctions and embargoes, communism will go away. There's no more reason for rationing of goods. Communism is a defensive mechanism. When you blockade people from trading, they have to adapt communist mechanisms to survive. Remove the sanctions and blockades, communism will go away. And it's clear you don't have any problem with dictatorships, because half the dictators of the world are your friends. All of Arabian Peninsula are friends of the Pinkskin. And then none of them are democratic. Half of Africa is dictatorship, and they're all friends of the Pinkskin. And none of them is democratic. So your problem is not dictatorship. And the communism will go away as soon as you remove your sanctions and embargoes. Then what the fuck are you trying to fight on the other side of the planet? One reason, and one reason only. You're trying to subjugate. The Pinkskin masters are trying to subjugate the people on the other side of the planet. Subdue the people of the other side of the planet. And they will not stop until everybody submits. That's all.